Hello, and welcome to the Common Craft video that has been created by Hester and Brownie. Now, the question we were given, was there a fundamental change in the way England was governed in the years 1509 to 1547, or in other words, during the reign of Henry VIII? In a short answer, no, not really, but kind of. Long answer, the rest of this video. So, there are two key figures we have to look at when we're examining the change in how England was governed during this period. I'm sure you've already guessed who the two are. That's one of them. And there's the other. Wolsey and Cromwell. The double duo of Henry VIII's politics. Now, in this sense, Wolsey is far less important than Cromwell was. Wolsey was the chief minister for good old King Henry VIII in the years 1515 to 1529 when he fell out in disgrace because of the whole issue with the divorce. Now, Wolsey, in the grand scheme of things, did very little to fundamentally change how England was governed. His changes were a lot smaller, more things to make it slightly more efficient or slightly more fair justice. For example, the Eltham Ordinances of 1525, I think. Now, the Eltham Ordinances was a list of rules for the Privy Council, how they were to behave. It cut down a lot of the members and it made it a fully professional rule, like you actually had to attend. Now, of course, this made it more efficient, but this is seemingly by a byproduct of Wolsey's true intentions of actually controlling the council more. Another example of a small reform he did was reforming the Star Council, or Star Chamber. Sorry. Now this was done so it would be more able to prosecute, the higher ups in society, the likes of the gentry who were enclosing land surrounded by peasants. So that meant they could no longer farm and graze on those lands. And, as I'm sure you know, Wolsey, as being a low-born man himself, felt very, very strongly about this. But apart from that, there wasn't really much else Wolsey did. A lot of other small things that have been, unfortunately, left out of this video. But that is the grand scheme of Wolsey's influence. Small little changes that make it slightly more efficient and a step ever closer to a modern government. Now, the real big man, the real heavy hitter in change in this era is good old Cromwell. Cromwell, well, there was one key thing that Cromwell did. Now, if this was in colour, you'd be able to see that this tape is red. And as we all know, the famous thing that is red and tapey is bureaucracy. People slag it off nowadays because they say, it just makes things so less efficient, nothing ever happens. But back in these days when, one man, the king, and his most loyal advisors are the people running the country, are the only people running the country, actually a diversification of roles and professions and responsibilities and those who hold them was actually a groundbreaking move that actually made the government a hell lot more efficient. Now, of course, unfortunately, the bureaucratization during Cromwell's era didn't actually make it more efficient because of this. Now, you see all that rubbish? Imagine that rubbish was power, and that's what Cromwell was doing to it. Pretty much every new position, whether it was in the Court of Augmentations or the Court of First Fruits and Tenths, Cromwell was in charge of it. He was in charge of many things, in fact, including a Lord Chancellor and all that stuff. So Cromwell was very powerful, hoarded all the power for himself. So the bureaucratization of the government at this point in time didn't lead to much efficiency. Now, of course, we all know the actual true nature of these new courts, such as the aforementioned augmentation of first fruits and tenths. It was for this stuff. The money. Henry wanted more money. And all these things were set up to tax the people or to handle all the new income that would come from the dissolution of the monasteries, considering the fact that Cromwell's tenure as chief minister was 1533 to 1540, and this was during the infamous dissolution of the monastery, so nearly all of this stuff was just to handle all that new money. Of course, we all know how it ends for good old Cromwell. Not very well. So, see you later, mate. Now, there is one key development not related to Cromwell or Wolsey. Not really, anyways. Henry actually, despite his very, let's be generous and call it a hands-off approach to governance, he actually did something very important. Of course, it was during the 1530s when he was becoming old and fat because of his leg injury, but he actually used this. Now, Parliament in this kind of medieval times is a lot like a barbecue. You buy the barbecue, you toss it in a shed, don't look at it for ages, and when you finally find it, you've got you throw a barbecue weekend every weekend just to justify the cost to yourself. Of course, for Henry, there's no real cost to justify, but he does use it over and over again. And what he uses it for is for statute laws. Now, statute laws is simply a law that was passed by Parliament. Nearly every major law in the end of his reign was passed by Parliament. Act of Supremacy, you bet. The 3 Acts of Succession, right on the money. Nearly all of them. The Acts of Annate, absolutely. The Act of Restraint of Appeals, that was statute as well. All of them. Which was merely to give them a veneer of legitimacy, to make it look like Henry wasn't an absolute tyrant when he was, as during this time, Parliament was little more than a rubber stamp. But what do all of these developments actually mean if the developments done by Henry, good old Cromwell, or what's left of him at least, and Wolsey, if they seem to have no effect because hoarding power or the fact that it was just a rubber stamp? Well, the bureaucratisation of the government and the increasing influence of Parliament through Henry's need to his feel that he needs to pass statute laws to make it look legitimate. Hell, he even tells the rebels of the Pilgrimage of Grace of 1536 that he's absolutely going to pass a law for Parliament to make it seem legitimate. These are important changes because it's not what changes in this reign, it's the precedent it sets forward. It shifts the perspective. It's not like imagine they're driving a car straight. This change isn't a sudden sharp right and off in a different direction, knowing Henry's government and the way things go for him, likely a sharp right straight into a brick wall. But it's more of a train. It's going forward, but because of these actions, way up the track changes. So it's not changing the direction for now, but in the future, because of the much stronger influence of Parliament and all that stuff, because of the multitude of laws Henry passed in the late 1530s and early 1540s, there was a large fundamental change in a few decades' time. That is why the answer to the question, was there a fundamental change during the reign of Henry VIII? No, not really, because nothing really changed. Henry was still an absolute tyrant, executing whoever he wanted, along with Cromwell. There was also Thomas More, a very avid humanist. So really, it wasn't any more democratic than it was years before. But because of this, more and more monarchs in the future were going to use the Parliament. Once the two-man show that was Wolsey and Cromwell stop hoarding all the power, the bureaucracy is actually going to be somewhat efficient. And that is about it. That is all. That is the main things there are to fundamental changes in government during the reign of Henry VIII.